Before we begin today's epic tale, imagine standing alone before an alien emperor demanding your surrender, only to have hundreds of dire wolves emerge at your side ready to hunt. If you love stories where humanity bonds with apex predators to defy entire galactic empires, hit that like button, subscribe for more HFY sci-fi every week, and let me know in the comments. What apex predator would you choose as your loyal war companion? The bitter winds of dusk howled across the shattered plains as Marcus Hale stood silent, staring out into the darkening horizon. He could taste snow in the air, mingling with the coppery tang of scorched alien metal that littered the battlefield below. The dying sun cast a dim crimson glow across twisted armor plates and collapsed mechs, illuminating silent shadows that moved around him with lethal grace. At Marcus's left side stood Fenris, the dire alpha. He was a mountain of midnight gray fur and iron muscle, standing taller at the shoulder than Marcus's chest, his thick ruff stirring in the icy breeze. Amber eyes glowed under his heavy brow, unblinking as they scanned the far ridge. Beside him paced Kale, beta male of the northern pack, his muzzle scarred from years of brutal hunts against alien patrols. They moved like sentient shadows, radiating the silent promise of violence at his command. Marcus drew a slow breath, feeling the old ache in his ribs from the plasma wound 2 winters ago. His black combat cloak snapped against armored calves as he stepped forward to survey the devastation below. Dead alien shock troopers lay strewn across the frozen ravine, their green-black blood steaming faintly in the cold. Behind him, half hidden among the skeletal remains of alien dropships, more dire wolves lay sprawled in disciplined formation. Silent. Watching. Waiting. He could hear them breathing, a rhythmic tide of life that calmed the jagged pulse in his throat. Without turning he spoke. Movement on the southern approach. Kale growled low in reply, a rumble that vibrated Marcus's boots on the rock ledge. Far below, blue flames flickered to life as an armored skiff glided over the ridgeline, its anti-grav turbines whining in the quiet. The craft descended with arrogant ease, landing on a scorched alien landing pad that Marcus and his wolves had cleared only an hour before. Steam vented from its hull as armored plates folded back. From within emerged the Emperor's envoy, a towering reptilian male in ceremonial jet-black plate armor chased with crimson sigils. His head crested with bone frills curling back over broad shoulders. Twin tusks jutted from his lower jaw, engraved with prayer markings to Zalgar the Unconquered. His golden cape fluttered as he descended, claws scraping the stone. Behind the envoy 2 lesser guards disembarked, each carrying long plasma glaives across their chests. Their armor bore the unmistakable insignia of Emperor Zalgar's personal Praetorian cohort, a serpent devouring a bleeding sun. Marcus said nothing as the envoy approached, his wolves pressing tighter around him. Fenris's lip curled, revealing teeth thick as Marcus's thumb. Steam drifted from his jaws into the freezing air. Human, the envoy hissed, voice vibrating with synthesized resonance. Your slaughter of our cleansing squad was impressive. He tilted his massive head, the bone frills clacking softly. But Emperor Zalgar grows tired of your pathetic resistance. Marcus studied the alien's expressionless visor. Then he should come down here and say that himself. The envoy gave a rumbling chuckle that grated like boulders grinding together. Bold. But predictable. This region's last human stronghold will be reduced to glass at dawn. Unless, he paused, gaze shifting to the dire wolves standing shoulder to shoulder around Marcus, their eyes glinting with cold hunger. Unless you kneel before his will. Lay down your weapons. Command your animals to submit. The Emperor promises your death will be swift. Marcus slowly unclipped his helmet from his belt and placed it over his close-cropped black hair. It locked with a hiss around his scarred jawline, visor flickering as thermal overlays calibrated. Inside the helmet, his voice came out calm and metallic. You've been here 6 years, reptile. How many times have your kind demanded that humanity kneel? The envoy's tusks curled into a sneer. This is not a negotiation, human. Good, Marcus said softly, placing his gloved hand on Fenris's ruff. Because the North does not kneel. For a moment, neither moved. The only sound was the rising wind and the low thrum of the skiff's idle turbines. Kale growled again, a deeper note that reverberated across the rock face. The Praetorian guards shifted uneasily, adjusting grips on their glaives. The envoy tilted his head, examining Marcus through his visor's optic slits. Then he barked out a harsh laugh. Look at you, he said, gesturing with a taloned hand. A single hairless primate and his pack of oversized vermin. You think these creatures will protect you when orbital fire rains down? Marcus said nothing, but Fenris stepped forward, fur bristling. The envoy's guards raised their weapons instantly, but the reptilian emissary raised his hand, restraining them. "No matter," the envoy said, turning back toward his skiff. "I will convey your refusal. And your death screams will amuse the Emperor's court when dawn arrives." As he mounted the ramp, he paused to look back once more. "Enjoy your final night on this wretched sphere." The craft's engines roared, lifting it into the reddening sky. Marcus watched it vanish beyond the clouds, leaving only silence and drifting flakes of snow. The wolves relaxed minutely, ears flicking back as they turned to him. Marcus removed his helmet and let the cold air sting his face. He knelt in the snow, planting the helmet before him. Fenris lowered his massive head until his muzzle pressed against Marcus's chest. Kale circled around to stand behind him, hackles half raised, eyes darting across the treeline in disciplined vigilance. Closing his eyes, Marcus inhaled deeply, centering himself in the old rites. Then he began to whisper, not in words of any human tongue, but in low vibrating syllables that resonated from his chest. Ancient sounds taught to him by Dire Alpha's predecessor, sounds only wolves of this size and intelligence could understand. The pack around him shifted, their ears flattening against thick fur. Soft growls rippled through their ranks like distant thunder rolling across a valley. He whispered again, deeper, until the syllables became a command that pulsed out through the icy night. From beyond the skeletal trees and half-buried alien wreckage, shadows moved. First came a trio of immense shapes, black and silver pelts rippling with frost as they padded into view. Their paws crunched lightly in the snow, massive heads lowered, fangs exposed to taste the wind. Then more shapes emerged, silent as ghosts. 10, 20, 30. The treeline itself seemed to flow forward with life as the dire wolves stepped into the dying light, fur stirring in the wind, eyes burning with quiet fury. They came in lines of disciplined formation, spreading out in tactical arcs around Marcus, each group led by a senior pack hunter. Their pelts ranged from moonlit gray to charcoal black, shoulders bristling with frost and ice-coated scars. Some wore scavenged alien armor plating bound to their flanks with woven synth leather harnesses. Others bore crude plasma blade mounts clamped to their shoulder ridges. And still they came. 50, 70, hundreds. The snow plain around Marcus became a seething ocean of dark fur, silent as death itself. Not one of them made a sound beyond the low rumble of controlled anticipation, each wolf holding its place in the formation, amber eyes locked on their alpha equal. Marcus rose to his feet, staring into the countless eyes that watched him. His hand closed around Fenris's thick ruff as Kale pressed close at his other side. He raised his voice, low and resonant, carrying across the assembled army. "Tonight, brothers," he said, voice trembling not with fear but with the weight of what was coming. "Tonight we remind the galaxy why Earth is called a death world." The dire wolves did not howl. Not yet. Instead, their rumbling growls rose in unison, echoing across the snowfields in a deep, throbbing chorus of blood-bound obedience. Marcus turned to the darkening sky, where far above, alien warships waited to unleash dawn fire upon the last free lands. He smiled without warmth, feeling Fenris lean heavier against his side, his breathing deep and slow. Let them come, Marcus thought. The Emperor demanded his surrender. At dawn he would send his answer, carried by hundreds of dire wolves hunting through fire and death, until even Zalgar's throne world trembled at the sound of Earth's fangs unleashed. And as the last light died from the sky, Marcus whispered to Fenris and Kale, his voice almost tender. "Ready yourselves. Tonight, we hunt." Snow fell like drifting ash through the silent trees as Marcus crouched beside Fenris, running his gloved hand through the dire alpha's thick ruff. Each strand of fur was coarse and cold, spiked with frost. Fenris flicked an ear, his massive muzzle brushing Marcus's armored chest in acknowledgement. He stared into the swirling darkness beyond the gathered wolves, remembering the first night he'd ever seen a dire wolf. The memory came unbidden, sharp and vivid against the bloodied snows of the present. 10 years ago, before he was Captain Marcus Hale of Earth's Northern Resistance, he had been a stranded infantry corporal fleeing the alien onslaught in what had once been Siberia. His unit had been vaporized by orbital strikes outside Yakutsk, leaving him crawling alone through burning forests, lungs seared with smoke and the stink of scorched alien flesh. It had been so bitterly cold his armor's thermal systems failed. Night came early, devouring the sky in obsidian emptiness. The forest lay silent but for distant echoes of alien search drones hunting for human survivors. Their beams swept between black pines, slicing through drifting embers. He had collapsed beside a half-frozen stream, coughing blood, ribs cracked from concussive shockwaves. His rifle's battery pack was long dead, its internal heat cell flickering out, leaving only darkness and the creeping numbness of hypothermia. When he woke again, it was not to the whine of alien scouts or the bite of exposure. It was to the steady, quiet breathing of something enormous. He could barely turn his head, eyes crusted with frozen tears, but he saw it then. A massive wolf, its fur like molten iron in the moonlight, was watching him from 10 paces away. Its eyes were amber gold, ancient and unblinking, fixed upon his trembling form with silent, brutal calculation. At first he believed he was hallucinating. The wolves of the north had been driven deep into radioactive exclusion zones decades earlier, and no terrestrial wolf reached this monstrous size. This creature was taller at the shoulder than he was lying prone, with paws broad enough to cover his entire helmet. When he did not move, the wolf stepped forward on silent paws. Its breath curled in slow plumes from powerful jaws. Blood matted the fur along its flank where plasma burns seared down to muscle. Marcus could smell burnt flesh and the iron tang of its wounds. The wolf lowered its head, sniffing the air around his broken body. Its eyes flickered to his exposed ribs and the dark stains blooming across his armor. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, shivering with delirium and dying resolve, Marcus spoke aloud in a cracked whisper. I'm not your enemy." The wolf's ears flicked back slightly at the sound. Its gaze locked onto his eyes, as if peering through all layers of weakness and pain to measure something deeper within him. It lowered its head further, jaws parting to reveal yellowed fangs thicker than his fingers. The black tip of its nose brushed his throat, inhaling deeply. He could not stop the tears that leaked from his raw eyes as he waited for death. But it did not come. Instead, the wolf stepped back, turned, and walked into the dark forest, leaving only its immense paw prints steaming in the snow. Moments later, Marcus lost consciousness again. When he woke at dawn, curled against a fallen pine, he was covered in thick, warm pelts of gray and black wolf fur. The plasma burns on his left arm had been licked clean and clotted with frozen saliva. Around him lay the faint paw prints of at least 6 massive wolves, each heavier than a polar bear, circling him during the night. It was that moment he would later realize when his bond with the dire wolves began. Years later, after he returned to human command lines with stories dismissed as trauma-induced delusions, he found himself back in the north on assignment to sabotage an alien forward fueling base. His strike team was pinned down by artillery mechs. Their radio screamed with evacuation orders they could not fulfill. When the alien heavy walkers advanced to finish them, they never fired a shot. From the treeline erupted a storm of black and gray fur. Wolves the size of armored cars smashed into the mech's flanks, ripping sensor clusters from heads, tearing out hydraulic pistons, dragging pilots from ruptured cockpits. The snow ran black with alien blood. When silence returned, Marcus stood in the carnage surrounded by wolves, all staring at him with the same amber eyes that haunted his memory. And then he saw him again. The same massive wolf with the old plasma burn scar down his flank stepped forward, towering over the corpses. Slowly it approached him, sniffed his chest, and rumbled a deep, chest-shaking growl that felt less like a threat and more like a greeting. That was the day Fenris accepted him into the pack as an alpha equal. Over years of guerrilla campaigns across the north, Marcus learned their ways. He learned their silent signals. Ear twitches meaning flanking maneuvers, tail flicks commanding arching retreats, low chest vibrations ordering silent encirclement. He learned to speak in tones and syllables that bypassed human language entirely, vibrating through their skulls with meaning born from older, deeper instincts. He discovered they viewed him not as a lesser being needing protection or a higher being to obey, but as one of their own, a fellow predator willing to bleed alongside them. On countless raids he moved through moonlit forests with wolves at his heels, slashing alien sentries with a plasma-edged halberd while dire wolves tore apart their armored companions in coordinated silence. Alien command logs recorded the attacks as acts of supernatural terror. Reptilian officers whispered of the ghost man and his fanged shadows. Propaganda units circulated footage to instill fear, but it only spread his legend further. Emperor Zalgar placed a direct bounty upon Marcus's head, 2 million galactic credits, transferable across any syndicate world, dead or alive. But no hunter ever collected it. Those who ventured into the dire north vanished, their frozen corpses found later, faces locked in expressions of disbelief, half buried under paw prints that dwarfed their chests. Now, kneeling among hundreds of dire wolves waiting for his command, Marcus exhaled and returned to the present. The wind swept his cloak against armored legs as he rose and surveyed the assembly. Kale prowled to his right, eyes scanning for threats among the shadows. Fenris remained motionless, a statue of lethal patience. Marcus's mind raced through the Emperor's threat. By dawn, orbital cleansing fire would rain upon the northern stronghold. The resistance outposts behind him, the last functional shield generator bunkers, and their human families would be vaporized within seconds. He could hear a faint whimper of a dire wolf pup deeper among the ranks. A massive gray female turned to nuzzle the pup, silencing it immediately. Their discipline was absolute, honed by predation and survival older than human civilization itself. Marcus activated the map overlay on his wrist console, flickering green and orange grids over his visor. He marked drop pod zones, alien shock troop formations, and orbital beam targeting predictions. His wolves shifted as he moved among them, massive heads dipping respectfully. Some bore the scars of plasma burns and acid splashes. Others still dripped black alien blood from earlier ambushes, tongues lolling as they panted silently in the freezing air. He paused beside Kale, placing his hand on the beta male's broad neck. Kale leaned into the touch, his deep rumble vibrating through Marcus's bones. Beyond him, Fenris turned his massive head to watch the human commander with calm, golden eyes. Marcus closed his fist, and every wolf tensed in silent readiness. He spoke quietly, each word vibrating with command. "Tonight we break them. Tonight we hunt not as beasts but as brothers." The wolves remained still, but a low, collective growl rippled through their ranks like a distant avalanche. Marcus's lips curved into a thin smile. He turned and walked back to the cliff's edge, the wolves parting around him like dark water. Far across the plains, alien fires flickered where Emperor Zalgar's armored divisions encamped for Dawn's purge. Distant orbital beacons strobed with cold blue light as destroyer-class ships aligned their targeting arrays. Marcus could almost feel the Emperor's arrogance bleeding down from the black sky. He unclipped a small transceiver from his belt and flicked it active. Static crackled before a coded voice replied. "Command node reads you, Shadow Alpha." Marcus's eyes remained fixed upon the horizon, where the cold dawn would soon rise over the last human lands. "Prepare your teams for synchronized uplink," he said. "When I give the word, release the hunt." "Copy that. Godspeed." He clipped the transceiver back onto his belt. Behind him, the wolves shifted in anticipation, their growls rising again in unison. Marcus lowered his helmet onto his head, sealing it with a hiss. His HUD flickered to life, scanning wolfpack formations and enemy drop coordinates with calm precision. He felt Kale brush against his armored leg. Fenris stepped forward to stand beside him, rumbling deeply in silent promise. Marcus drew a slow breath, calming the racing thunder of his heart. At dawn they would come. And at dawn he would unleash a nightmare upon them, a storm of fang and claw and iron. He raised his fist once more, the silent command rippling out across the wolves gathered beneath the blood-red sky. Let them come. The Emperor believed he faced a dying human and his animals. He did not understand. He faced a man who had been accepted by death's oldest children. A man who had become more than human through pain and bond and blood. As the final stars vanished behind drifting clouds, Marcus whispered into the quiet, his words carried only to the wolves at his side. "Rest now, brothers. The night is ours." The first streaks of false dawn bled across the horizon, casting the snowfields in ghostly gray. Frost clung to Marcus's armored pauldrons as he crouched atop a rocky outcrop overlooking the plains. His visor flickered with data streams, wind speeds, temperature gradients, enemy landing coordinates. Below, the wolves waited in absolute silence. Hundreds of massive bodies sprawled across the snow, their breathing rhythmic and slow, fur glistening with frost and moonlight. Fenris sat unmoving beside him, golden eyes narrowed toward the dark sky. Kale prowled behind the front line, inspecting formation gaps, ears flicking with low growls of correction when a young wolf shifted in restless anticipation. Marcus felt the weight of the moment press into his bones. His heart pounded not with fear but with cold certainty. He toggled his wrist console, opening the Resistance's encrypted comms channel. Shadow Alpha to Command Node. Status. Command Node reads you. All uplink beacons set. Awaiting your mark for synchronized disruption. Hold until confirmed enemy deployment. Out. He cut the channel and watched the heavens darken. High above, alien orbital destroyers loomed like silent predators. Blue targeting beacons cascaded down from their ventral arrays, stroking across the plains in sweeping arcs as they mapped resistance fortifications for the Emperor's cleansing strike. Static crackled in his helmet as orbital comms encrypted within alien channels bled through. Praetorian Division Hammerfall, prepare planetary breach. Emperor Zalgar demands immediate compliance. Shock drop commences in T-60 seconds. Marcus clenched his jaw and rose to his feet, towering among the wolves. Frost cracked and slid from his boots. Fenris turned his massive head to watch him, nostrils flaring with each slow breath. The distant thunder of alien drop pods reached them, a grinding rumble that grew to a deafening roar as black specks appeared in the sky, growing rapidly into armored cylinders wreathed in plasma flames. They fell in staggered formations, descending on stabilizer jets as friction fire lit the pre-dawn darkness with orange trails. The wolves bristled but remained silent. Marcus lifted his halberd from where it was driven into the frozen ground beside him. Its plasma edge flickered to life, humming with blue light. The first drop pods slammed into the plains with seismic force, sending up geysers of snow and pulverized ice. Hydraulic clamps fired, stabilizing the pods as external armor petals exploded outward in clouds of vaporized frost. From within emerged alien shock troops. Towering reptilian males clad in full body plate, plasma glaives clutched in taloned fists, marched out in disciplined columns. Their heavy breathing fogged the freezing air as their HUDs scanned for human heat signatures. Behind them thundered mechanical walkers, quad-legged siege engines bristling with rapid pulse cannons. Their searchlights swept across the plains, illuminating nothing but drifting snowflakes. Marcus toggled his transceiver again, voice calm despite the storm of adrenaline coursing through him. Command node, initiate uplink disruption in 3, 2, mark. On his HUD, green-coded uplink icons flashed to red. Across the snowfields, dozens of hidden beacons carried by wolves activated in synchrony, flooding the orbital command frequencies with false data bursts. Targeting overlays on alien HUDs flickered and vanished, replaced by jagged static and corrupted coordinate streams. The alien walkers froze, their weapons tracking blank snow. Confusion rippled through their formations as unit commanders barked orders in guttural alien dialects, attempting to re-establish visual lock. Marcus lowered his halberd, pointing it toward the alien forces below. Fenris raised his muzzle, nostrils flaring. Kale moved up beside him, tail high and bristling. Across the ranks, wolves trembled with contained fury. He gave the command, voice low and final. Run. Like a thunderclap, the wolves launched forward as one. Hundreds of dire wolves surged down the slope in disciplined ranks, paws pounding the frozen earth with a drumming roar that shook the air. Their growls rose into a rolling crescendo, deeper and darker than any song of battle humanity had ever sung. The first alien shock troopers had only enough time to turn their helmeted heads before the wolves tore into their ranks. Massive jaws closed around armored torsos, fangs puncturing composite plating as easily as wet clay. Blood sprayed in emerald arcs across the snow as wolves ripped limbs from sockets, shaking reptilian bodies like rag dolls. Kale slammed into a plasma walker, his 100-stone mass colliding with metallic knees. His fangs sank into an exposed hydraulic piston, ripping it free in a shower of pressurized fluid. The mech toppled sideways, its plasma turrets firing wild streams into the dark sky before shattering against stone. Marcus moved through the chaos, halberd slicing down upon a Praetorian captain who raised his glaive too late. The plasma edge cleaved through the alien's helm, splitting bone and metal in a single downward arc. A wolf the size of a van slammed into another, dragging it screaming into the snow where its throat vanished beneath fangs thick as Marcus's wrist. He advanced through carnage like a wraith, each movement precise and unhurried. Wolves flanked him in coordinated formation, guarding his sides while ripping apart enemy vanguard lines. He pivoted, halberd humming, and drove the butt spike through a trooper's chest plate before reversing and slicing another's head clean from its shoulders. Fenris barreled into an armored mech twice his height. Its plasma sides carved trenches into his flank, but he twisted, jaws closing around its cockpit shield. With a titanic wrench of neck and shoulders, he ripped the entire cockpit module from the mech's chassis, casting it aside as sparks and coolant geysered into the air. The wolves did not howl. They roared with growls that thundered across the snowfields, vibrating in the armored chests of alien warriors as primal terror took root. Some troopers dropped their weapons and tried to flee, only to be dragged down by wolves surging past them in disciplined lines, fangs closing with wet crunches of bone. Marcus activated his wrist comms as alien formations buckled under the onslaught. Command node, confirm orbital disruption integrity. Integrity confirmed. Orbital targeting arrays remain scrambled. Repeat, the sky is blind. He watched as the wolves encircled the remaining aliens, funneling them into tight kill pockets where disciplined dire wolf subpacks lunged forward in synchrony. Massive bodies crashed into the aliens from all sides, dragging them down into blood-slicked snow. The last plasma walker staggered backward, hydraulic screaming. A trio of wolves swarmed it, tearing off its rear armor plating as Kale lunged upward, fangs closing around its exposed fuel feed. With a single savage wrench, he ripped the line free, and the mech erupted in a geyser of orange flame, illuminating the battlefield in flickering firelight. Marcus turned slowly, taking in the sight of crushed alien formations scattered like broken toys across the plains. Steam rose from fresh blood spreading in dark pools beneath the wolves' paws. Fenris padded forward to stand beside him, muzzle slick with black-green blood. His massive head lowered until it pressed against Marcus's helmet, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory. Marcus rested his forehead against Fenris's for a long moment, feeling the old scar tissue along the dire alpha's burned flank vibrate with deep rumbling breaths. Around them, the wolves paced among alien corpses, ripping apart fallen troopers to ensure no survivors. Their formation remained disciplined, each subpack reforming ranks as they finished their designated kill sectors. Marcus toggled his wrist comms again. Command node, broadcast on all resistance frequencies. Channel open. He stared across the battlefield as dawn's first light bled over the ridge, illuminating the dire wolves standing among burning alien walkers and twisted corpses. "This is Captain Marcus Hale," he said, his voice calm and cold. "The Emperor demanded our surrender. Today, we gave him our answer." He ended the transmission and lowered his arm. Wolves gathered around him in silent ranks, blood steaming from their jaws as they stood shoulder to shoulder with their alpha equal. Far above, orbital destroyers continued to sweep targeting beams across blank snowfields, blind and impotent. Marcus exhaled, feeling the ache of old wounds throb in his ribs. He raised his halberd skyward, plasma blade flickering in the rising dawn. Fenris tilted his massive head back and roared. Not a howl, a roar. A deep, chest-shaking bellow of dominance that vibrated through the earth itself. One by one, the other wolves joined him, their roars merging into a thunderous chorus that echoed across the plains for miles. The sound reached the alien command ships in orbit, carried by atmospheric comm vibrations. Reptilian officers paused in confusion as the roaring chorus crackled through their bridge speakers, primal and alien and impossibly defiant. On the plains below, Marcus stood surrounded by his brothers, dire wolves of 1,000 scars, as dawn rose in fire and ice over Earth's last stand. He lowered his halberd, voice quiet within his helmet. "Rest now, feet. For tonight, we hunt again." Emperor Zalgar sat upon his obsidian throne, taloned fingers drumming against the carved skull armrests. His frilled head lowered as multiple hollow screens hovered before his burning yellow eyes, each displaying fragmented combat feeds of slaughtered shock troopers, ruptured mechs, and smoldering armored drop pods scattered across snowfields. He could hear their roars through recorded helmet feeds, those monstrous growls that rattled the spines of his Praetorian commanders. Wolves. Hundreds of them, dark and immense, tearing apart his finest divisions under the command of a single human male. His gaze narrowed as he focused on one particular feed, a towering human in black tactical armor, plasma halberd raised high among his dire wolves, his visor reflecting dawn's pale light. Marcus Hale. Zalgar's chest vibrated with a low growl that sent tremors through the throne chamber. The kneeling courtiers at his feet pressed their snouts to the marble, daring not to raise their eyes as he spoke. "Prepare planetary cleansing strikes. Glass the northern hemisphere by nightfall." The Praetorian War Master raised his tusked head. "Emperor, orbital targeting arrays remain corrupted by uplink sabotage. They have jammed precision locks on all northern coordinates." Zalgar's claws clenched, gouging deep scars into the skull armrest. "Then realign frequencies manually. Deploy hunter drones to pinpoint the traitor's exact position. I want Hale's head mounted upon this throne before dusk." The War Master bowed and retreated quickly, armor clanking against the polished black floor. The Emperor leaned back, his massive chest rising and falling as he watched the silent image of Marcus standing surrounded by dire wolves. "Enjoy your final dawn, ape," he rumbled, fangs glinting beneath curled lips. Thousands of miles below, Marcus crouched within the shattered remains of an alien walker cockpit. Frost crept across the cracked canopy as Fenris pressed his massive head inside, amber eyes watching his alpha equal with unblinking intensity. Marcus's breath misted before his visor as he toggled encrypted comm feeds across his wrist console. Each flicker brought up lines of alien code and orbital encryption parameters. Behind him, Kale paced among the corpses, tail lashing with silent agitation as he sniffed the drifting wind. Marcus's gauntlet fingers danced over the interface. His pulse drummed steadily in his ears, echoing each quiet keystroke. Every line of alien code reminded him of the months spent imprisoned in an orbital slave yard after his first capture, forced to maintain and repair reptilian command systems under threat of neural flay. Every punishment, every scar burned across his back, had taught him the Emperor's tech as intimately as his own heartbeat. Now those scars guided his fingers with lethal precision. He isolated the targeting array override keys, then inserted looping false coordinate relays at beacon grid intersections. The orbital strike algorithms recompiled instantly, feeding their mirrored targeting solutions back to the destroyer-class ships circling the stratosphere. Behind him, the wolves fell silent, ears flicking as if they felt the shift in the sky itself. Fenris rumbled deeply, vibrating the cockpit walls around Marcus. His helmet comm crackled to life. Command Node's voice, ragged with disbelief, broke the quiet. Shadow Alpha, are you seeing this? Alien orbital targeting has locked onto their own forward bases. Confirm this is intentional. Marcus's lips curved in a slow, cold smile. Confirm. Stand by for firestorm. High above, alien destroyers adjusted their ventral rail turrets and plasma array angles. Their systems, blinded to the deception, aligned with what they believed were rebel outposts, but were in reality their own command and supply centers along the southern ridges. Fenris withdrew his massive head from the cockpit, turning his muzzle to the sky. The wind carried the distant thrumming of orbital capacitor charging cycles. Wolves across the blood-soaked plains lifted their heads, ears flicking forward as vibrations trembled through the frozen earth. Marcus stood and stepped down from the ruined walker, placing his hand on Fenris's ruff. Kale approached, muzzle streaked with black alien blood, golden eyes burning with silent resolve. Above them the destroyers fired. From the heavens came spears of burning light that tore through the cloud layer with roaring violence. The beams hammered into alien forward fortresses miles away, vaporizing command bunkers in a single breath of blinding plasma. The planes trembled with rolling shockwaves as kilometer-wide energy pulses detonated fuel reserves and power cores, sending pillars of black smoke clawing into the morning sky. Marcus felt each impact ripple through his chest, a silent drumbeat of retribution. Wolves prowled among burning debris, eyes reflecting the infernos that consumed their enemies. He toggled his comm again, voice calm despite the destruction around him. Command Node, broadcast to all resistance cells. Channel open. He looked across the snowfields at his brothers, Dire Alpha and Beta standing at his sides, wolves of every scar and pelt color gathering behind them. Alien fire rained upon their oppressors as he spoke. This is Captain Marcus Hale. Today the Emperor learned a lesson he will never forget. Earth does not kneel. We do not beg for mercy. We do not bow to tyrants who come to claim what nature itself forged to remain free. He paused, feeling Fenris lean into his armored side, massive body trembling with low growls that resonated through them both. We stand with the apex predators of this world. And together, we hunt. His visor flickered as the broadcast ended. Static crackled back to silence, leaving only the roaring fires consuming alien strongholds in the south. Kale moved forward, sniffing the wind, then let out a single deep bark that rippled down the wolf ranks. Wolves shifted, forming disciplined columns once more. Their golden eyes glowed with feral light as they turned to Marcus, awaiting his next command. He raised his halberd high. Dawn burned bright across its plasma edge as he spoke softly to Fenris. This is only the beginning. The Dire Alpha growled in deep agreement, a low thunder that vibrated the snow at Marcus's feet. In the pale light the wolves began to move. They streamed down the ravine in silent tactical ranks, shadows flowing across the ice toward their next hunt. Between their massive bodies padded dire wolf pups, small only by comparison, learning the disciplined formations from their elders. They moved with quiet resolve, the promise of future fangs that would one day carry humanity's banner into darkness. Marcus followed them, his black cloak billowing in the dawn winds. His pulse beat steady with cold certainty. High above, the alien destroyers began to reposition, unaware that their terror weapons had failed to cow this world's predators. They remained blinded by arrogance, unable to see that their greatest threat was not orbital firepower, but the primal bond between an unbreakable human and the oldest hunters of Earth. As he walked among his wolves, Kale pressed against his hip, rumbling softly. Fenris stayed at his left side, massive shoulders rolling with each silent step. Marcus lifted his gaze to the pale horizon where fresh snow clouds gathered. Beyond them lay alien fortresses, slave camps, breeding factories, all targets for the hunts to come. Each conquest would bring humanity one step closer to freedom. And in that dawn light, surrounded by silent ranks of dire wolves, Marcus felt no fear, only purpose. For in their eyes, he saw reflected what the Emperor would never understand. A man willing to bleed beside his predators could never be conquered. The dire Alpha turned his great head to Marcus, eyes glowing golden with silent promise. Together they would teach the stars what it meant to challenge Earth. And as the first snowflakes of morning fell, carried by a biting northern wind, Marcus whispered to the wolves at his side. "Run with me." They surged forward, silent as death, into a new day of blood and freedom.